Is there a button, John, that says make me over completely?
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking for.
Joe, I see you.
Joe?
I see you.
Oh, there you are. We see you now, Joe. Okay.
1 second.
Is there a button, John, that says make me over completely?
Yeah, I hope to find that one.
Joe, I see you.
Joe? Joe needs
I see you.
Oh, there you are. We see you now, Joe. Okay.
1 second.
Is there a button, John, that says make me over completely?
Yeah, I hope to find that one.
Joe, I see you.
Joe? Joe needs
I see you.
Oh, there you are. We see you now, Joe.
Hey, our recording is feeding back into this live.
My apologies.
Perfectly okay. All right, it's 7:04. Entertain a motion, open the May 12th meeting of the New Paltz Zoning Board of Appeals.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
I
Okay. Attendance, we have Leonard Loza's here, John Gatto is here, Catherine Fuller is here, Stephen Esposito is here, and Amy is here. So we have a full board. We also have our building inspector, Stacy Delaree, our attorney, Joe Moriello, and our secretary, Alana, is here. Okay, next item. The minutes of our April 14th meeting, I found nothing wrong with them. They were in perfect shape. Did I miss something? Did anyone see anything?
I have one comment or question.
Okay.
Sorry that I didn't see this before, Alana, but on page 3, one of the middle paragraphs, a board member had asked if the board has authority to grant variance from design standards. And then the next sentence says, this board does have the authority to grant a variance from any provision of the zoning code. That statement sort of stands by itself. It looks like advice from the chair or the lawyer. So, Joe, did you say that? You see where I am? This board does have the authority. I would just like that statement to be attributed to somebody other than Alana.
That's one of the 5 questions.
This board does have the authority to grant a variance from any provision of the zoning code. I'm looking at page 3.
No, number 5?
No, on page 3, the paragraph that begins Ms. Zelantis addresses. You see where I am?
No.
Are you looking at the April 14th minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry.
Different minutes?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you know what, if you have a question about something, we can always bring it up later on in discussion. We can go back to something, and anytime we can educate a member, that's always a good thing. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on the April 14th minutes? I guess not. Okay, I make a motion for approval of the April 14th minutes.
Second that, I guess.
Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passed. Minutes are approved. Our next meeting is June 9th. I will be there. Steve, will you
Yes.
be there? Okay. Amy,
Yes,
Catherine,
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it looks like we'll have a full house then also. Okay, next item, public comments. If anyone has anything from the public they would like to speak about, please keep in mind also that the Trans Hudson public hearing is still open. It would be more appropriate if you're going to speak in regard to Trans Hudson to speak at that public hearing.
Oh,
Yes, Fawn?
I did have a couple comments about that. When is that public hearing? I'm sorry, I did not see it.
The public hearing is in continuance at this meeting,
Okay.
okay?
So just quickly, a couple of the items, I have to note that drive-throughs are like literally 20 feet down the road from this corner. So I'm not sure.
Fawn, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the attorney, Catherine Zelantis, from Trans Hudson has rescinded her request in the application for a drive-through.
Okay.
So,
Great, I didn't know that. The other thing that I'm always curious, I was looking at other public comments, when people offer a list of businesses that New Paltz needs, I always find that interesting. I guess it's from your perspective. We don't have a sporting goods store anymore, I might note. People walk into my son's store every day looking for worms still. And I found it a little bit presumptuous to say that a bowling alley or a roller rink or something like that could still work in New Paltz. It's been tried repeatedly and failed. They just closed a roller rink over on the other side of the mountain. For some reason, those things are I don't know if it's because the hiking trails and stuff that we have, all these other opportunities, those things always seem to fail. I don't know where this project stands with putting residential housing in it. I don't know that right by the thruway is the best place in a commercial zone to put apartments or housing. I think it's very, although we need affordable housing and we need more housing for seniors, I just find that odd. I was very happy to see this project includes the recognition of the rail trail and the possibility of public amenities. I've been in other communities up and down the Hudson River where this trail runs, and the communities that have embraced it and included it into their planning with, small things like restrooms, drinking fountains, a place to sit, just have a whole different feel to them. And I think that's the experience we want people to have in New Paltz. That when they come here, they're welcomed and there's the basic amenities and things to do. So I just wanted to share those thoughts and observations. I can, if I may finish reading some of the other comments and see where you are with the plan and send you some more in writing. But I thank you for your time.
thank you, Fawn. Alana, I neglected to ask, I know who Fawn Tantillo is, but you may not know her, but please add her name to the record.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
Sorry, Fawn.
Thank you.
Okay,
So, Len,
yes.
do you want us to wait until you reopen the public hearing on this project, or would you like us to
I'm
comment?
going to open it
Okay.
in just a few moments. But
Okay.
before I open the public hearing, I think that the appropriate thing to do, rather than a dialogue of things that may not be relevant to this public hearing, would be to allow the attorney for the unit to speak. Ms. Salantis?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the zoning board.
Excuse me 1 second. Has every member of the board received a copy of the letter that was sent? I believe it was May. It was in early May. Did everyone receive that letter and read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. You may continue.
So that's what I was just going to note, that you should have at this point received our May 5th submission along with a new site plan. And I just want to be clear that the applicant BFB withdrew its request for a variance from to allow a drive-through for a food establishment, store. So the only variance request before this board is from the 2 occupiable story limit. You also probably got a chance to see the Ulster County Planning Board's letter. And I just would like to address that. First, the planning board doesn't, or the Ulster County Planning Board doesn't propose a plan modification. It just gives its opinion that this board should deny the variance request. And it gives 3 reasons for it withholding its support of the variance request. It says that there's a need for affordable housing. It talks about the community's design goals and the overall thrust of the MSMU standard. The problem is that none of these 3 things are a legal basis for this board to deny the area variance requested. If this board were to deny the variances based on those grounds, that determination would be arbitrary and capricious. This board is bound by state law to apply the balancing test, to balance the benefit to the applicant if the variance is granted, as weighed against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community by such grant. So the first part, to be clear, is the benefit to the applicant. So while there may be a need for more affordable housing, that's not a benefit to the applicant. That's a potential benefit to the town. If the town wants to develop affordable housing on that site, it could purchase the property and develop affordable housing, but my client is not an affordable housing developer. That's not a benefit to the applicant. And we made an analogy in our submission that we said, when people come before this board and they want to expand their family rooms, you ask them, no, instead you should expand your garage because the town prefers more off-street parking. No, of course not. You would never say that. And it's just as, arbitrary to say that this developer needs to develop affordable housing. Likewise, the community's design goals and the alleged thrust of the MSMU zone, that's not a basis either to deny the variance requested. Like I've previously stated, whether a zoning district was formed a year ago or 30 years ago, it's still the same standard under law. It's the balancing test. And some of their claims, the Ulster County Planning Board's claims, are slightly disingenuous because the MSMU zone is comprised of, and I don't want to go too far afield on this, but we're talking about 7 parcels. Aside from my client's parcels, the other parcels are either fully developed or not capable of being developed. So you could hardly say that based on one property, that's the design goals of the town. Because really the MSMU zone, for all practical purposes, applies to one property. And in any event, of the 30+ different requirements of the MSU zone, my client is going to be complying with the vast majority of them, except for one, the 2 occupiable story limit. Another troubling thing that was said in the Ulster County Planning Board's claims was about, quote, true mixed use projects. I just want to be clear, there's no requirement to mixed uses whatsoever in the MSU zone. And certainly no requirement that certain mixed uses are better than other mixed uses. And nonetheless, my client is proposing a mixed use project that is, they're proposing commercial retail with municipal recreational use. That's a mixed use project. So in any event, what is evident is that if this board follows its statutory directives and applies the requisite balancing test, this board must grant the variances that we've requested. Just to go through the balancing test again, first, there is no undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood. Quite frankly, having 2 occupiable stories would be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, because the character of the neighborhood are freestanding single-story retail commercial buildings. We previously provided photographs of this with maps, and we showed you that with the exception of one such project, they're all one-story buildings. There's 14 single-story freestanding retail commercial buildings in the surrounding community. Second, the benefit to the applicant cannot be achieved by another feasible another feasible method other than granting the variances. Again, critical to this analysis is the benefit to the applicant, not the benefit of having an ice skating rink. That's not a benefit to the applicant, not the benefit of developing affordable housing. That's not a benefit to the applicant, but the benefit to the applicant. And we heard a lot about residential development. I just also want you to be clear that a lot of planning board members voiced their opposition to having any residential development so close to the thruway. They just thought it was not an appropriate place to have residential development. We previously submitted a letter from our professional consultant, Shannon E. Older, providing how it's not financially viable to construct a second-story occupiable story above retail commercial space. You heard testimony at the last meeting from my client, and my client has put the testimony that you heard in letter form that was submitted to you. Ulster County Planning Board's suggestion to construct a second floor for quote aesthetic purposes really borders on the absurd. As I said in my letter, we're not constructing, a movie set with fake facades. It's just not feasible. It's cost prohibitive. And we provided a letter from our, project engineer from Collier's Engineering and Design, specifying how it would be prohibitive to undertake such a construction to essentially just make second floors for aesthetic purposes. That's just absolutely not realistic. Also, it's not realistic or feasible from a seeker perspective. So again, Ulster County Planning Board noted that this project already went through a full seeker review and a negative declaration was issued. This project proposes a total of 16,115 square feet. To add an occupiable second story, we'd be on everything would increase the square footage to over 32,000 square feet. That would be a much more impactful development and would trigger the need for much greater parking than the site would allow potentially. And you're talking about a development that's significantly more intensive and would cover more of the site than what was authorized by the neg deck, which was a 21,825 square foot development total. So, and just to be clear, what was authorized by the neg deck was 21,825 square feet. We are proposing less than what the negative declaration authorized of 16,115 square feet. And I provided, so you could have it, the extensive negative declaration that was done by the planning board, where they considered a multitude of issues. Third, the requested variance relief from the 2 occupiable story requirement is not substantial. What we're talking about is a site plan that will result in less density and less height than permitted under the code. This is probably the only variance, and I've said this before, in New York State where I am asking to do less than permitted by the code, and for less density and less height. And even if you were to decide that this were a substantial variance, we've provided cases that say that even where a variance is substantial, it's arbitrary and capricious to deny a variance where there will be no change to the character of the neighborhood. And that is the case here with the 14 surrounding single-story freestanding buildings in the neighborhood. And fourth, the requested variance will not have an adverse effect on the neighborhood's physical or environmental conditions. Again, this is the opposite of an adverse impact on the physical environmental conditions. It would be more impactful and adverse to the environment to build the second story. The project will provide for the extension of the Empire State Trail throughout the property and for people to park their cars there and then take bikes through the village and the town. That encourages bicycle transportation throughout the town and the village. It offers an ability for people to put their cars park their cars and travel through the village on bicycles. That's good for the community and good for the environment. And again, this project, which is a very unique project that mixes, commercial with municipal recreation uses, provides a public amenity to the town. And I'm sure the vast majority of variances that come before this board, the projects do not provide similar public amenities that this project is affording the town. And finally, this alleged difficulty is indisputably not self-created. This project was all, in the final stages of the approval process. And when the economic feasibility of a proposed retail/commercial development was assessed years prior, it was in the final stages of the approval process when the property was rezoned. So again, this is not a self-created hardship. Even if it were a self-created hardship, which it's not, that's not a basis to deny an area variance. So on balance, and applying the actual balancing test that this board is required to apply under statute and under law, I would suggest to you that this board must grant the requested variances from the 2 occupiable story limits. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, I'd like to entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing for the Trans Hudson. Thank you, Amy. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay, got it. Catherine? Steve? Steve? I can't hear you, but that's okay.
He's on mute, I think.
Okay. Thumbs up is good. All right. So the public hearing is now open. Those that wish to speak, I would appreciate if when you speak, if you would not repeat what you have already spoken. If you have new information, we'd love to hear it. Please do not read a letter that you had read to us once before. Those letters are presently a matter of record. Okay. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand and Alana will recognize you. Joe, you're first.
Excuse me, just for the record, and I'll direct this to Kathy Zelantis, since technically the board had not opened the continued public hearing when she just made her last presentation a few moments ago. Catherine, do you want the entirety of those comments to be part of the public hearing record?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
I think those should be part of the public hearing record. Thank you.
Yeah. Alana, do you have that?
Her letter?
No. Well, do you have what Ms. Zelantis spoke about this evening?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Now, did all of those that were and are signed on to this Zoom meeting hear what Ms. Zelantis had to say?
Yes, I did.
You heard it, Kitty.
Yes.
Let me see. Daniel, did you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Elizabeth, did you hear it? Elizabeth's not, she's on mute. Christopher? Okay. Well, if we can't hear us, okay. Who is going to speak first? Raise your hand if you would like to speak. Katie, you may speak.
Okay. I think that the
Please, each
character.
person that's speaking, please state your name for the record.
Oh,
So the
Kitty Brown. I live in the town of New Paltz.
Thank you.
The character of North Putt Corners Road is largely residential, other than the few adjacent commercial interests. If you drive to the end of North Putt and get to Horsenden, you will see a neighborhood filled with 2 and sometimes 3-story residences. So it is a residential neighborhood, and many families happily live there have their bedrooms on the 2nd story. So there's no reason to think that we couldn't have housing at this site. the municipal amenities are not something that local taxpayers are interested in paying for. If you look at Water Street Market, which is adjacent to the rail trail, which is part of the Empire State Trail, that business operates restrooms and bike racks and other public amenities that enhance the Empire State Trail, but at no cost to taxpayers. So I think it is a little disingenuous to talk about a municipal amenity without having secured any kind of agreement from the municipality that taxpayers are willing to pay for that. So it would be great if the Empire State Trail went through that project. And that is certainly something that the planning board has the authority to determine, but it should not be relevant to your deliberations. When the applicant talks about 16,000 square feet being less than was approved originally, that's great. Just do 16,000 square feet vertically. Less footprint on the property. You can have your second story. It's still the 16,000 square feet. It meets all the new zoning. And that would be a great solution to this problem. And the final thing is, generally, I thought with a ZBA hearing that the applicant, I know that the applicant did post the little pink signs. I can't see them now. I don't know if it's because of the overgrowth of spring, but it would be good to have those posted again. And it would also be helpful if we could have stakes. My experience in the past with the ZBA is that if an applicant wants to put a structure in, they put stakes in so that the neighbors can see exactly where it's going to go. And from the renderings that were submitted, all we see is one rendering off 299 with one car going in, but it's really hard to tell where the entrance and exit on North Putt are going to go. So if you do hold this public hearing open, I hope that the applicant will put the pink signs maybe on the guardrail so people can see them a little bit better, and also put some stakes in so that you as the ZBA and we as the public who use North Putt Corners can really see where those entrances and exits will be. Thank you.
The public hearing notice is in the ground on the North Putt Corners Road. It's been there for.
I'm sure it is. I just drove by today. I can't see it. So if it could go on the guardrails, it would just be a little more visible.
That's another, I would not ask that any signs be placed in the guardrail area. The last thing I want to have is a sign blocking vision of anyone coming in or out of that intersection. The notice has been placed in a place on North Putt Corners Road where it can be seen, and I believe that its position is adequate.
Okay, I will drive a little more slowly and try to see him.
Okay. Next person that wishes to speak, please state your name. Fontantillo, is that you?
That I would like to speak again. I have a great deal of respect for Kitty Brown and her opinion, but I have to point out that while more housing is needed in the area, the town itself just chased a senior housing project that I was quite excited about, rezone the property so it can't even go there on Brock Ferris. The town itself, while I will agree, if you go a quarter mile up North Putt Corners Road, it becomes more of a neighborhood area. But the town itself is putting up a huge structure just north of Henry Du Bois that goes and took over another warehouse above that. So I believe that the neighborhood atmosphere doesn't start for a good quarter mile up North Putt Corners Road. I just know from, it seems absurd to me to put housing in the middle of a parking lot surrounded by highways and roads and the New York State Thruway. I have residential space over my commercial space, and it does create problems. I've had residents that I had to ask to leave because they were screaming out the window at customers going into the retail store because they didn't like where they parked their car. It just doesn't, this does not seem like a good place to have residences. I just cannot state that strongly enough. And like I said, the neighborhood area just is, it doesn't start to be a neighborhood till you get quite a ways up North Putt Corners Road.
Thank you, Fawn. Amy, you have a question?
Yes, just a procedural question. Since the applicant is not asking to put any houses on this site, is it possible for us to sort of remove that question from consideration? Can we say, no, we're not going to talk about the advantage or disadvantage of housing, affordable or not, because that's not what's in front of us?
That is correct. If the MSU standards and the bulk design standards have requested a second story, they do not specify what is to go in there. So the question of putting housing there really is not on the table in front of the ZBA.
Thank you.
Joe, am I correct in that respect?
Agree, Len. I think
Excuse me?
I would agree, Len.
Thank you.
Really, what's before the ZBA are those very narrow criteria in terms of what the board must make a determination about. And in making that determination, it's analysis of those 5 factors, which the board goes through at each meeting. Those are
Yes.
really the only relevant issues to this application, I think, and the board's inquiry into it.
Thank you for your, Amy, did you get that?
Yes, so in the interest of brevity, I would just ask that people not address housing or other matters that are not on the application in front of us. Thank you.
Okay, the next person that wishes to speak, please.
I think Daniel's up.
Okay, Daniel, good evening.
Hi, yeah, I mean, I'd actually prefer not to comment. I just wanted to request or inquire about whether the public hearing will be extended into the next meeting. Hearing what Ms. Delantis said was welcome news to be sure, but as far as I know, the May 5th submission was not put into the online folder. Alana does an amazing job, and I completely understand if just this one time something slipped past. I may be mistaken, but I certainly didn't see it. And this is a fairly seismic shift in the variance requests. And so that's my only, inquiry / request that the public hearing remain open in June.
Joe, would you like to comment on that?
Just a clarification. Is that request or suggestion directed to the idea that the May 5th letter withdraws the application for the variance for a drive-through?
That's my impression based on Ms. Zelantis' statement. I'm just saying,
Okay.
it was just as far as I'm aware, this was the first time the public had been made aware of this substantial revision in the nature of the variance request. In that the drive-through proposal had been withdrawn and there's apparently a new site plan or modified site plan or something. And so I just think it's in the interest of transparency and fairness that the public hearing be extended so that, there's an opportunity to, look over the new plan and, in light of all that's been said over the previous months.
I, at the present time, don't have a problem with that, but that will come in the form of a motion after we're through listening to everyone's comments. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak, please?
Before we leave that, Len, and Catherine Zelantis can speak as well. In terms of the physical plan for the physical site and what that plan is, I mean, even if the variances were to be granted here, that plan is going to proceed to the planning board for its review. Catherine, do you agree?
I agree. And in fact, the only change to the plan was removing the drive-through on the food establishment and replacing that area with parking spaces. So that's the change to the plan. I mean, otherwise it's exactly the identical plan. So I don't see a basis to hold over the public hearing. If any, we reduce the scope of the variances being requested. If we went the other way, yes, I would agree. But we reduced the scope of the variances that we've been talking about since day one. So we're only seeking the 2 occupiable story variances now.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? I see several names, but I don't hear anything.
I don't have anything in the chat either.
Okay, so at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Len,
Yes, Joe?
if I may, before the board entertains a motion to close the public hearing, I would just maybe want to ask if the applicant's attorney wants to address anything on the record during the public hearing with respect to anything that was said this evening. Kind of one last opportunity to address any of the issues that's being had.
Thank you. I just wanted to address one of the claims about the taxpayer costs. I just wanted to be clear that in this project that's being proposed, my clients are going to construct the trail, the parking, the bathrooms. So that's not the taxpayers that are going to incur the cost for that. And people say you could just put the square footage vertically. I think we've shown in our submission, it's not a solution to build a second story based on the type of project that's being proposed, which is commercial retail. It's not feasible. And that's why we're asking this board to grant the variance.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Apparently not.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry. I just want to clarify my comment. I'm outside now because it's so beautiful. The municipal costs will come in maintaining the restrooms and other municipal amenities. And that's not something that has come before either the town board or the village board. So it's not the construction, it's the ongoing maintenance, trash pickup, cleaning the restroom.
Do you know that for a fact?
Well, I guess we can find out now. Who will bear the cost of maintaining the restrooms and the other municipal benefits?
Is that relevant to the ZBA's decision, Joe?
No.
I do not believe it is relevant to the ZBA's decision.
Okay, it is part of the application, so that's why I'm commenting on it.
I understand.
Okay.
Stacy, any comments from you? No. Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing, but I would like to let the public know that we will accept written comments that will be reviewed prior to our next meeting. Is there a second out there to close the public hearing?
Len, before you do, I think if you do that, there should be some time deadline for those further written submissions following the close of the public hearing. Within
Okay.
7 days, 14 days. Generally, the board doesn't hold it open for more than 14 days.
Well, I would say 10. Okay, let's take a number in the middle. 10 days prior to the next meeting. Anything that's going to be submitted written must be submitted. Anything submitted after that time will not be accepted. A second on that, please.
I second that.
Thank you, Amy. All those in favor signify by aye, either thumbs up or voice.
Aye.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, John. Catherine?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is closed. Okay, a decision with this variance will be at the next meeting. Okay, next item on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members.
Yes, good night, Ms. Solantis. Next is the public hearing for 33 Craigswood Road. The application is Edward Olby. I entertain a motion to open that public hearing with regard to questions and comments. Looking for a second, please.
Second.
I second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor signify by aye.
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 Okay, public hearing is opened. Who's going to speak? Anyone?
I don't see anybody.
Okay.
Is there no one here on behalf of the applicant?
No. My name is Jesse Conklin. I'm here on behalf of the owner.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to establish on the record if someone is here on their behalf. They don't have to speak, but they're here.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Stacy, I have a question for you with regard to the pool height for, the fence height for pools.
It's a 48-inch New York State requirement.
Okay. And if anybody wanted to go anything higher than that, they'd have to come in front of us?
Anything higher than 4 feet in the front yard, okay, would
Yes.
require variance.
Okay.
So it's important to understand where the front yard goes from the street, the front lot line, to the front line of the house. Or
Excuse me, I've got to turn the light on. 1 second, please. Okay. I can't see the map. All right, sorry, I'm back.
So it's important to understand that the town code will not allow more than 4 feet in the front yard. And the front yard goes from the front lot line for fences to the front line of the house, or 50 feet, whichever is greater. Okay.
Okay,
So for this particular pool, okay, and its location, the maximum height of the fence is 48 inches without a variance.
okay, I understand. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that's interested in speaking? Now, I see a square with a phone number. Oh, just blinked on, blinked off.
It's Jesse.
Oh, okay. I guess no one's here to speak. I entertain a motion to close the public hearing on 33 Craigswood Road.
I move.
Thank you, John. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye. Public hearing closed for 33 Craigswood Pool. Okay, next public hearing is 19 Outlook Farm Drive. Chris Smith. Again, this is for a swimming pool. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing for 19 Outlook Farm Drive.
So moved.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearing is open. Mr. Smith, I see that you are here. I don't know if anyone is here to hear what you might have to say. But if you could give us a brief overview. I mean, all the board members know what you're here to looking to do. But I can't tell from the screen if you have anyone there that'd like to comment. So I think it would be best if you speak first to perhaps educate them if they are here.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mr. Boardman, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. The variance that we're seeking for the O'Connors, which Mr. O'Connor's here as well. His name says Tricia there, his wife. We are not able to locate the pool in the rear yard due to the septic reserve area and the existing septic system that is in the back. Therefore, we are asking for a variance to place the pool in the side yard of the residence. There's currently a courtyard over there with a fence and some plantings, which are going to remove and then replace with the pool. In regards to any comments that we have, gotten back from either neighbors or anything else, the main concern was maintaining a view of the ridge behind the house, which the O'Connors were gracious enough to meet with one of the neighbors, and they visibly looked at the area, assessed the height of the fence and any screening that we were asking for in the front yard along the side of the property, and they felt that it was an adequate view of the mountains behind the house. Essentially the reason for needing the variance is, again, because the septic reserve area is in the backyard and the requirements for the offset to that are too great and would bring us down closer to the existing wetlands in the back, as well as more disruption to a sloped area in the back of the property.
I understand. Is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak with regard to this application? Alana, do you have anyone?
No, I don't have anyone in the chat or anything.
Okay. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing for 19 Outlook Farm Drive, request for variance for a swimming pool. Steve says yes. Second, thank you. All those in favor signify by aye, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Okay. So now we go to application review. 12 North Putt Corners Road.
Before
I
we
think
do
we're
that,
going,
Len, could I ask a couple of questions of Stacy?
of course you may.
So on the last page of the renderings, Stacy, there's a whole series.
Wait, hold on. Amy, which property are you looking to discuss?
O'Connor Residence, 19 Outlook Farm.
Oh, no, we're not there. When we get to that one, we'll have a discussion on that one.
Sorry.
Okay? That's okay. That's okay.
So sorry.
There is, at this point in time, I don't believe there's any discussion with regard to 12 North Putt Corners Road. I would like everyone to carefully read the letter that was submitted by Catherine Zelantis, digest it, and our discussion before granting or denying the variance would be taken up at the next meeting. If anyone has anything in particular with regard to 12 North Putt Corners Road that they would like to discuss at this point in time, I would not deny you the opportunity to speak. So please, if anyone has anything they would like to say, please raise your hand and we will hear what you have to say. Joe.
Just a reminder to the board, the public hearing having been closed, the board is required to make a final determination with respect to the variance requested within 62 days of the meeting tonight.
Yes, I am familiar with that. Thank
Certainly
you.
next month's meeting falls within it, but just to kind of remind the board, there is a
Okay.
limitation of time.
Thank you very much. Okay, did everybody get that? Thumbs up that you understood that, please? Thank you, thank you. Okay, 60 days with which to make a decision. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the area variance for 33 Craigswood Road. Let me get there. Okay. Let's have some discussion. Is there any discussion that anyone has with regard to this that they would like to bring to the table?
Yes, Len.
Yes, John, please speak.
Yes, I was involved in the site visit regarding this variance request and toured the site and saw the staked out location of the possible pool and got a much better sense of what the property is actually like. I would say that the applicant has not been exactly straightforward on describing this property to us. When they send us maps, they essentially cut off multiple acres of their property, concentrate on kind of the landscaped part of the property and the place where they want to put the pool. They just leave out multiple acres of property. They have described this as being untenable, unviable, because the slope goes up really steeply and there's boulders in the ground, et cetera, et cetera. Frankly, on the site visit, looking at that part of the property just to the north of the landscaped part of the yard, the slope is not really very significant at all, at least for some distance. It's a wooded area, goes back, it's fairly flat. There might well be boulders and rocks there that make things difficult. But to my view, having visited it, this is a site that would not require a variance. And I think it would be hard for us or improper for us to grant a variance where there's feasibility of doing what they want to do without a variance.
Amy, Catherine? Amy, your hand is up.
Yes, I'd also like to say that the map I have, I may have incomplete information here, but the map I have doesn't show the distance from the pool to the wetlands. And since the pool is uphill from a damp area, which is lawn, but leads to a wooded area, which is clearly wetlands, I think that there could be a drainage or runoff problem. And I'd like to understand more about that.
Stacy has her hand up.
I don't think that we had any mapped wetlands there, but if there's a concern that there are wetlands there, then a short form application should be filed by the applicant and we can get the wetlands inspector out there to look at it. If there is a wetland, there is a 100-foot buffer. If the wetland's more than 1/10 of an acre.
I'll tell you what my particular concern is that it's going to be a gunite pool. And if something goes wrong, you know, if everything works perfectly and there's no flood or crack in the pool, anything like that, then the chemicals may be contained in the pool. But if there's any sort of problem, even very heavy rain, any chemicals that are in the pool will overflow down to that wet area. And it doesn't look to me from the local topography like there's any place for it to run off. When I was looking at the various DEC regulations, it appears to me that what results from a salt pool is the death of invertebrates that are in the wetland area, and therefore nothing for birds to eat. What happens when you have a chlorine-based water purifying system is that various chemicals are formed, fluorinated and brominated chemicals that are carcinogenic. It's not going to be treated through a sewage system or anything like that. I'd like to look into that in more detail.
Okay, I will keep that in mind when we speak. Do Catherine, do you or Stephen have anything to speak of?
I would like to hear from the applicant why the area described by John was not considered a viable alternative, and why they requested this variance when it looks as though, yes, there's rocks and trees, but it is not as steep as initially described to the board.
Mr. Schmidt, are you still there?
Yes,
No,
I
this
am.
is
This is the other applicant, Mr. Conklin, though, is the project you were speaking about.
yeah. This is Jesse Conklin. Can I answer all these questions?
Yes, please.
All right, so let's first touch on what John said about the north side of the property and the ability to put a swimming pool there. So let's just assume that you're going to put a when we were all at the site and walked the site, okay, when we walked around the side of the house, we dealt with this a very great slope that went down towards the pond, okay, and as we walked around to get to the north side of the house, we entered a flat area, which is the septic. And the area that you're talking about would be on the far, far north. So in other words, for me to get access to the back of the property to try to construct something, to take all the trees down, I would have to have a way to get heavy equipment, concrete trucks, dump trucks, excavators, bulldozers, all of that sort of thing, around the side of the house, over the septic, in essence destroying the existing septic field just to get all the way to the back. And then I'd have to trench for utilities, okay, to do that as well. So there's no way to build it realistically without completely destroying the existing septic. We'd have to stay far enough away from the expansion field. And really, I mean, you didn't walk in the woods very far. I mean, it's not flat. I've been building swimming pools for over 20 years. If there was a reasonable location that was cost effective to build the pool without coming before you folks for a variance, then I would have done it. So I mean, anyone's more than welcome to come back out and see that hillside. I encourage you to walk in the woods and see the boulders and the topography and all that sort of stuff. And I would love it if you could tell me how I'm supposed to get 10 80,000 pound concrete trucks back there without destroying a septic. All right, so let's touch on what Amy said. Amy, I appreciate everything you said about the salt pools. Okay, you voiced your idea of the salt pool when we spoke on site. My clients put together a notarized letter saying, at your bequest, that they are not going to install a salt system. Okay, but let's touch on salt systems real quick. So let's just assume this was a salt pool. Okay. What is the correlation between the water that will splash out of a pool, if a child swims in the pool and does a cannonball, per se, how does that correlate to the hundreds and hundreds of tons of salt that the New Paltz Highway Department puts on the roads every winter, and that washes down into the same streams? Okay, it's not something that can really be brought up, because the amount of water that might come out of a swimming pool is negligible. All right. As far as hold on, let me finish. You're talking about a heavy rain on a chlorine pool, or any pool for that matter. Well, this pool in particular has an automatic cover on the pool. All right. So a heavy rain, the rainwater sits on the cover. There's a pump that sits on top of the cover, and it pumps the rainwater off the pool and drains it away. So, and that water that's being pumped off the cover is not going to be in addition to any more water that would normally be on site than what's the runoff from the rain anyways. So as far as a short form, to my knowledge, there are no DEC or federal wetlands on that property. Okay, so I think that is, a 50-foot buffer or a 100-foot buffer. I don't think that's needed. If there was wetlands, that would have been brought up in the original survey, which it's not stated on the survey. The survey that was done last year for this project. The reason why that the survey doesn't include the other acres to the north of the house is because the north of the house is just such an unreasonable place to build that it wasn't worth having the survey company go in there and do a topo of that. So, as far as being reasonable, all right, this application, in my opinion, is extremely reasonable. The site access, yes, it's a damp, wet area, but there'll be perimeter drains and all that sort of stuff all around the pool. As far as runoffs or, catastrophic problems like the pool cracking, that could be said of any structure. Okay, there could be something that happens in anything. The foundation for the house could split. There could be ground movement, and the whole thing could slide down the hill and end up in the woods. I don't have a crystal ball, and neither do you. That's something that shouldn't even be brought up and spoke about, because the likelihood of that happening is very few and far between. So I don't think that any of those comments are reasonable. I really don't think that the north side is someplace that can even be explored. And you know, I'm sticking my ground with this, that what we proposed is reasonable, and I really feel that you guys should vote on this and see which way it goes.
May I speak now? Are
You
done?
may.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm not talking about a child splashing some water out of the pool in a cannonball. I'm saying that if there is a problem with the pool, let's say that a deer falls in and drowns and you have to drain the pool. A large amount of water is going to be released into an area which is already wet, and I want to investigate further whether that might, for instance, require a speedies permit. Stacy, is there?
We can look into that, but first of all, the deer would have to jump a fence and then have to get to the automatic cover.
Talking to Stacy. Stacy, is there a possibility that a speedies permit would be required in that situation?
Absolutely not.
Okay. I would like.
May I say one thing? Not to speak in favor of the applicant at this point in time, but of all the swimming pools that I am familiar with, the gunite pools are probably the strongest and most stable pools that are on the market today.
Right. No, I agree.
That I have that knowledge of. So that's my 2 cents.
Right. If, for instance, there was some reason why the pool had to be drained, then I'm interested in asking at the DEC whether there's some requirement for how the water from the pool should be handled. I'm not talking about rain runoffs that could be captured in a vinyl cover, you know.
Well, I do believe that if a pool needs to be drained, it is not a building department issue. It becomes a homeowner issue. Stacy, am I correct in that respect?
Well, provided that the pool water does not run off into the storm sewer, yes. And
Okay.
doesn't cause flooding for a neighbor.
Okay. All right. Joe, any comments?
You're muted, Joe.
My apologies. To maybe take a look at the criteria and go through each item one at a time with respect to this application. I mean, those criteria apply to every
Yes.
application for a use variance. You may find it's easier to get to the answers if you take them one at a time.
Okay.
And the board discuss them as
Sure.
a group with respect to each issue.
All right. So,
Remember too that it is to weigh the benefit to the applicant against the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or community. Those are the issues. And in making that determination, the board goes through those 5 criteria.
let's go through those 5 now, and then we'll have a discussion at the end. Okay. The applicant, I would answer, when we read these questions, please answer yes or no. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of this area variance. Yes or no?
No.
Thank you. Next one, letter B. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
No.
Letter C. whether the requested area variance is substantial,
No.
whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or the district.
No.
And the last one, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance.
No. It's not self-created, and I'll touch on that just because my clients bought the house with the septic in the house as is. If the original developers of the property anticipated a swimming pool on the north side, then the septic and things of that sort should have been located in an area elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. At this point in time, I'd like the board to, if they would, agree or disagree or comment with the answers to these 5 questions. Raise your hand if you would like to speak, please. John?
I disagree on a couple of points. Number one, if you're talking about an adverse event or adverse effect on the character of the neighborhood, I would say, yes, there is, because this neighborhood, like every neighborhood in the town of New Paltz, is one where you don't have a swimming pool in your front yard. Putting one there is contrary to that, and it's there for a reason. The same line of thinking goes into the question of substantiality. This is all plus minus. You either put a pool there in the front yard or you don't. That's a very substantial difference. It's all or none. And my main objection is still the one that I touched on before. I don't have any doubt whatsoever that it would be much easier and cost effective for all concerned to put the pool where it's proposed to go. That doesn't mean it's impossible or unfeasible to locate it elsewhere in an area not requiring a variance. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Anyone else have any comments? Catherine? Amy?
I do.
Yes.
Since I piggybacked off John's comments about the alternative on the north side of the property, I'm satisfied with the applicant's concerns about feasibility and the location of the septic tank and how to access that area. I think that his response was appropriate.
Thank you. Amy? Catherine? Amy or Stephen?
I'd like to agree with what John said. I do find this this request to be substantial. There's a pool there where there isn't a pool there, and he does have enough property to locate the pool. Perhaps it would cost more, but to locate the pool in an area where he wouldn't need a variance.
Steve, any thoughts?
Mute.
Stephen,
Didn't we approve a guy on Albany Post Road 2 years ago to put a pool in front of his house? Or no, Albany Post Road, we approved the guy.
yes,
Was
we
it
did.
Albany? Okay, that's all I want to say. I'm with the guy with, let him put a pool in.
We didn't have a vote yet.
Okay, wow. I'm slowly losing battery here.
Okay, so I'll speak quickly. Entertain a motion for approval granting a variance for 33 Craigswood Road to put a pool in the front yard. I need a
Yes.
second. Seconded by Steve. Okay, let's do a roll call vote on this. I'll say yes. John?
No.
Amy?
No.
Stephen?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Motion granted. Stacy?
Jesse, are you still there?
I am.
Okay, Jesse, I just want to let you know that I am currently on vacation. And because I am here at this meeting, okay, I will be out of town tomorrow morning. Your permit will daylight until after the 24th.
That's fine. That's you're entitled to go on vacation.
I just want to let you know, I didn't want you to call in the office looking for it. Okay,
I really appreciate everything. Thank you very much, everyone.
Stacy, enjoy your vacation.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, next one is an area variance for 19 Outlook Farm. Chris Schmidt. Okay. As before, there are 5 questions. Please answer yes or no to these questions.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the area variance.
No.
Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance.
No.
Whether the requested area variance is substantial.
No.
Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district.
No.
Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the granting of the area variance.
No.
Okay, it's time for member discussion, if you would, please. Comments? Amy?
I have 2 questions for Stacy. One is about the large number of side yard pools shown on the last page of this submission. Existing side yard pool. And the other one is about the apartment. Was that eventually permitted?
That has no relevance to this application.
Okay.
That is a building department issue.
Okay. However, the side yard pools, this map seems to suggest that the neighborhood is full of side yard pools. Is that correct, Stacy?
Not correct. The applicant doesn't quite understand what a front yard and a side yard is, and a rear yard. So I did go through this, okay, and the only pool that's located not in a rear yard is the pool, let's see, it's five something. A variance was granted for a pool in the front yard. We spoke about that earlier for Mr. Morrissey, which is the one pretty much directly across from Outlook Farm Drive up on the hill. Okay, that particular pool is located within the front yard, but it is not visible from the street. All the other pools that they have marked that are located in a front or side yard, that is not the case. They were all located in the rear yard as defined by the definitions in our code.
Thank you.
Okay. Any comments?
Is there another question?
I don't know. Joe, any comments?
I have comments.
Again,
Okay, John?
I suggest that you, as a board, go through each of the criteria, asking and answering those questions in your deliberation. That's what it's about, not how many other pools there may or may not be in a front or a side yard.
Yes.
Really?
We did the 5 questions already.
Well, I mean, as a board.
Yes, no, I understand that. We're in discussion. Yes, we're in discussion right now. John has a question or a comment?
I didn't feel like I really got much clarification regarding the actual delineation of wetlands and the actual extent of septic areas. The maps provided show a huge area. I mean, quite substantial, large area, and it's designated as estimated area of septic. We're talking about a thing where feet may matter. I'd like to get a lot more exact determination of where the septic actually is, not where it's estimated to be. Likewise for the wetlands. The applicants said that they would send us a mapped version that came from the original, I forget what it was called, but he held up and showed us a hard copy of a wetlands map with the boundary of the wetland shown. And that is not at all what we've been shown in his submissions. It's like in his submissions, that boundary is a straight line cutting straight across parallel to a cross section of his property. I just question whether those are accurate. And as I say, we're in a situation here where a few feet may make a real difference in what's feasible or not feasible.
Len,
Yes, Amy?
I'd just like to say, you heard the applicant's answers to the 5 questions, but I don't believe the board would necessarily agree with those. I'd like to go through them ourselves.
Okay, that's why after the applicant answers, we have discussion. What I could do, give me a second here and I'll get back to that page. Okay, I'll read the 5 questions, and I'll answer how the applicant answered, and then we can discuss them one at a time. Whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of this area variance, the applicant said no. John?
So I disagree. I went on the site visit. The proposed location of this pool is very visible from the street, which is not very far away at all. And there's no other such pool on any property in the neighborhood. So I'd have to count that as an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood.
Did anyone speak in opposition to this? My relevance is that my recollection rather. Alana, did anyone no one spoke on this, is that correct?
No one spoke on it.
Thank you.
There was a letter though, I do believe.
Yeah, there was a letter, but it seemed to be more concerned with the accessory apartment, if I'm remembering correctly. Do you remember that?
I think the letter addressed fencing
Oh, it's the
and
fence.
the view of the ridge as you walk by. And
Yes,
they were requesting a more transparent fence than something that would obscure that view. That's my recollection.
That is correct. There was a neighbor that was concerned about the view of the ridge. The law requires that there be a 4-foot fence.
Mr. Chairman, am I allowed to address any of the comments at this time, or would you like me to wait?
Well, we're going to deal with them one at a time.
Okay.
So one applicant has spoken with regard to the first one. Are there any other applicants that have a comment or question with regard to an undesirable character being produced? Okay, let's move to the next question. Whether benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than this area variance. Any questions or comments with regard to that? John?
Yes, this follows on my previous comment about, exact determination of extent of septic systems and exact extent of wetland and buffer. So I don't feel I have enough information to really determine whether or not there's another feasible method.
Stacy, any comment with regard to the wetland?
Just a question, Lynn, how do the rest of the board members feel about, whether they have enough information? John's concern is, I think, twofold, whether there is some method feasible for an alternative, and two, the environmental conditions in the neighborhood, which comes later in the 5 criteria. How do the rest of the board members feel? Do you feel you have enough information from the submissions before you to decide those questions, or do you want to?
Well, that's why I was going to comment on letter D.
Yeah.
John's response was similar to my response that I was going to question with regard to letter D. So
I also feel, along with John, that it's very unlikely that the wetland edge is just linear going across the property like that. I would like to see a little more detail. How was that determined? I see a mark of 227 feet plus 100 feet to the wetland, which is a lot. But I'm just curious whether the wetland is in fact where it shows on this map.
is it a wetland or a designated wetland?
Yes, it is definitely classified as a wetland under our wetland and water course law. It is definitely federal. I don't think it's state, but it's definitely wetland.
Okay, good. All right, that's good to know. Okay, we'll discuss that, I guess, much more when we get to letter D. Whether the requested area variance is substantial. Applicant said no. Comments from the board?
Well, I think it's substantial because, as John said in the other application, there's a pool there or there isn't a pool there.
Okay. Catherine, Stephen?
I don't have a comment on this one.
Okay. Now we're at letter D, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. I believe that something other than a straight line, I've never seen a wetland line be straight. There's always some wiggle to it.
Maybe
So-
we can get a little more information about that.
Mr. Chairman, we have supplied additional maps from the original subdivision, which Stacy had provided to us, which I believe was forwarded to the rest of the board. I do understand that the site plan that we created has a straight line, and may not be 100% accurate to the line that's on the survey, but given the distance from the wetland, we did not follow the contour, which is our error. And I do apologize for making an assumption there.
I understand that. Stacy, is that an acceptable line? Do you have the map handy?
Which map are we talking about?
I believe this one. I mean, this one.
The older one you sent, Stacy.
I'm sorry?
I think it's the older one you sent. Remember you
Yeah.
sent it a couple weeks ago?
It's
Well-
map number 137. It says
Yeah.
refer to the town clerk's office number 137 dash, or
Yeah, I don't have that particular map, but that was the subdivision map. So that's where the wetland was delineated at the time of the subdivision. And the house was built in 99, 2000. So it's been over 20 years. Generally shrink, if anything, will grow. And I'm not familiar with this particular wetland, so I can't say that I can't speak to whether or not that map is accurate. Having said that, if the board feels that the wetland is an issue because they're not inclined to grant the variance and they want more information, I would recommend to the applicant that they file a short form application to get the wetland inspector out there with that subdivision map to determine, okay, if that line is accurate. And he's not there to delineate anything for you. He's just there to say it's accurate or it's not accurate, and it should be redelineated. One has not been done on this lot since our wetlands law was adopted. So the initial visit, okay, is done at the cost of the town. And if any further visits are required, then, an escrow would need to be set up to cover the cost of the consultant. That is an option.
I would ask that of the applicant because I would think that if this were to come to a vote this evening, that perhaps the chance of getting a variance in your favor might be far greater if there was a more accurate or exacting wetland line as the line of 20 years ago has shown perhaps some change. So I would recommend, now this is entirely up to you. We can vote if you'd like, or you can go to Stacy, get that form, get the wetland inspector out there who would make a small report to us that the map is accurate, the map is inaccurate, that it needs to be redrawn, or any mixture thereof. That really is your decision.
Okay. I think that we would do that, and we had offered that previously, but we wanted to see what the pleasure of the board was, as far as getting that mapped. I am curious as to understanding the reasoning for having the exact delineation as opposed to that. Are you suggesting that moving it further, like moving the pool towards the wetlands would be?
Well, you need to be 100 feet from the wetlands. Is that correct, Stacy?
Yes.
That would be, yes, that is the minimum.
Now, is that the fence or the pool itself?
Disturbance. Any disturbance has to be
Okay.
100 feet from the edge of.
Okay, so the edge, the outermost edge of the fence needs to be 100 feet from the wetland area.
Well, any disturbance. So he's going to need a little. He'll need a little bit more than 100 feet.
Okay, right. I understand. Okay.
Right. And in the site meeting, I know that Amy was very concerned about the wetlands, and in all my experience, I've never had a board direct me or ask me to move a project closer to a regulated wetland area. And then John, I would like to address the septic area if we can. If you want to look at the maps now, I'd be happy to, because I did receive some further clarification on it, just in talking with an engineer about where it is. And the location that we put on the map is the septic reserve area, which is immediately in the back. We have foiled Ulster County Department of Health, and they have replied that they do not have the septic plans for the property.
No, 20 years ago, that's probably correct. They don't have them. Those don't need to be filed.
One other thing about the septic that I'm not clear about, the septic reserve area. I mean, I know there's a regulation about 50 feet downhill from a septic field. Does that apply to a septic reserve area as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So, and that's part of the reason why. So if we are downgrade from the septic reserve area, now we're encroaching on the wetland buffer. We had looked at other possible locations, but due to feasibility of that, and, wanting to stay as far away from the wetlands as possible, is how we ended up in the side yard and asking for the variance. We're happy to have the wetlands delineated, or at least have the wetland inspector out and have them start there with the report. I would like to address some of the other undesirable changes to the neighborhood comments if allowed now, or if we want to wait till the second meeting.
I just want to say before you do that, you suggested, I think, that I was interested in moving the pool closer to the wetland. No, I'm not. I think the pool is in an appropriate position from the map that I can see. I would just like to know the number of feet from the currently existing wetlands, not the wetlands of decades ago, to the edge of the disturbance. That's all.
Okay.
And I just also want to clarify with the board that the code says the pool is not permitted in the side yard. The pool, not the pool area. Okay, not the pool house, which is an accessory building, the pool.
Got it. Everybody else grasp that? Okay, the last question, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the decision of the zoning board of appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the area of the granting variance. I don't believe it was self-created. I think the biggest concern, this is my personal opinion, that it appears as though the biggest concern with regard to the decision on this particular variance has to do with its proximity to the wetlands.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Am I speaking for the board? Thumbs up, thumbs. Thank you, Stephen. John?
Okay.
Yes. Amy? Yes. Yes, Catherine. And Stace, you have a question?
Yeah, so what, again, I'll reiterate to you, I'm currently on vacation. I will not be back in the office until the 24th. Okay. If you're going to make a short form application for the wetland inspector, that can be downloaded from our website, and you can bring it into the office and you can see Fred with it. Hopefully he'll know what to do with it. I don't think he's handled one before. Possibly Alana might be able to help him out with that.
Yeah, I handled the other one. Someone did one recently and I handled it. So
Yes. So maybe
Okay.
if you were going to make that application, bring it to Alana and she can get it off to Mark while I'm away, because I won't be back into the office till the 24th.
Okay, and you said it's a consultant that does the wetland work?
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, the town's wetland inspector, he's a consultant. So, you got to supply him with the subdivision map and the application, okay? And Alana will get it to him and he'll contact you and schedule a time for you to go out to meet you out there.
Okay.
Alana,
yes.
is there, I know you're not at the town every single day, so
Yeah.
will you be able to coordinate with Mr. Schmidt with regard to the correspondence with the wetland inspector, and since Stacy's on vacation?
Yeah. I don't even really technically need to be there. I did the whole thing virtually for a subdivision for the planning board. So I can just deal with it tomorrow.
Excellent.
I will be there
Okay.
tomorrow. So.
Thank you. Amy, there was something in one of the other minutes. Okay, wait, hold on a second. So, Mr. Schmidt, you're ready to move forward? You know what to do?
I am. I just wanted to, again, check with the board to see if there are any other questions or comments that you would like me to address before the next meeting, just so that we could hopefully have all the adequate information so we can make a decision at the next meeting.
Okay. From my perspective, the wetlands issue will suffice my concerns. I would appreciate it if any other members of the boards have any other questions or concerns that they would like to see addressed.
Well, let me just say, and maybe it will save some trouble. Even if I accept all the submitted maps at face value as being accurate and true, I still have some questions about areas of the property that could fit the proposed pool without requirement of a variance. So I guess I would just urge the applicant to look hard at that and keep an open mind about possibly not the preferred position or the least expensive option, but feasibility.
Right, and we have, and I'm aware that you also live in the neighborhood, and we have spoken with other neighbors in regards to the location, and they are in favor. And their only requirement was to not block the ridge line, which again, I said the O'Connors met with them. We'll be taking some pictures from the street to show how the pool will not be visible from the street, and you still have a great view line to the ridge. But we can certainly look at other options, but once you take into account the appropriate setbacks as well as the septic setbacks, there are not many other feasible locations on the property.
I only bring it up because it's not for me to suggest alternative locations, but take a look with an open mind.
If you have pictures, if you could submit them when you submit the wetland information, that would be beneficial also with regard to it not blocking views of the ridge.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so I would, Joe, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. Given Stacy on vacation, and I honestly don't know how much time will necessarily go by from making the wetlands or doing the short form and getting the inspector out there and getting things back to the board and the rest of it, whether all of that's going to happen. So the question is, my recollection tonight was the board closed the public hearing.
That is correct.
So its time limit is running if that stays closed. And I want to make sure that the applicant has enough time to give the board the information it wants. I mean, you
Well, let me,
rescind that, reopen the hearing and continue it. If
Yes.
everything comes in by your next meeting and it's sufficient to make a decision, you could always close the public hearing then and do
Yes.
it. But at least your clock isn't ticking and putting possibly both the board and the applicant at some disadvantage.
excellent advice. I would agree with that. So I would, at this point in time, I'd like to rescind our motion to close the public hearing for 19 Outlook Farm and have a continuance of the public hearing to our next meeting in June. Have a second on that, please. Thank you, Stephen. I'll second that. All those in favor of a continuance of the public hearing for 19 Outlook Farms, please say yay or nay.
Yes.
Two.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Catherine. So the public hearing is essentially back opened, Mr. Schmidt. That means that the clock will not begin ticking and we can close it at the next meeting if you're fortunate enough to get everything submitted so that no one gets pushed to the wall.
Okay, sounds great. I appreciate it. Stacy, is it okay for me to reach out directly to the wetland to coordinate that in your absence, or does it have to go through?
No, you have to get the application and all the signatures to Alana, and she'll forward it to Mark, and Mark will contact you.
Okay. All right, thank you, Stacy.
Any other comments from any other members of the board with regard to this evening's meeting? I guess not. Okay, I entertain a motion to close this meeting and thank you all for coming.
So move.
Seconded by John. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
See. Okay, what do I got? Just a thumb there, Steve? Thank you. All right, good night to all. Thank you for coming. Stacy, enjoy your vacation.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, good night.